In a few moments you will be watching the story of a town where after dark people turn into monsters, and so the citizens cannot get out of their homes after sunset. The show starts when a man is spotted ringing a bell and walking down the street as the sun is about to set. The man is later introduced as Sheriff Boyd. As the natives hear the bell ring, they all head to their houses. The people that own shops also close their shops and go back to their houses. We are also introduced to Mr. Liu, his son, Kenny Liu, who is the deputy sheriff, and Kristi. We see the sheriff is making sure all the people have returned to their houses before dark. After he is done with his job, he returns to his place. Upon reaching his home, the sheriff touches a stone and it is later revealed that everyone in the town has one. We are then introduced to a family of 3. Megan is the daughter of Frank and Lauren. Lauren and Megan are waiting for Frank, who hasn't returned home yet, and it has started getting dark outside. It is later revealed that Frank could not return home because he was drunk at his friend's house and had passed out due to being drunk. Lauren couldn't wait anymore for her husband and decided to cover the door and the windows up. Megan goes up to her bedroom to sleep. Before going to bed, she makes a bedtime prayer when all of a sudden she hears that someone is outside her window. She opens the cover of the window and sees an old lady. The old lady tells Megan that she is her grandma and tells her to open up the window. Megan tells her back that she is not her grandma, but the old woman tricks her and tells her she is really cold and feels alone. Lauren comes up and sees what is happening. She immediately tells Megan to not open the window, but it is too late. As the window opens, the old woman turns into a monster and Megan screams out loud. In the morning, Frank returns to his home, but there are a bunch of people outside his house. Upon reaching the house, Sheriff Boyd rushes out of his house and asks him where he was last night. When Frank tells him where he was, Boyd slaps him hard and takes him up to the room of the house. Frank, upon seeing his wife and daughter in pieces and blood all around the room, starts to sob and puts his head down on the ground. The sheriff puts the gun to his head in anger and tells him that a man has to protect his family and orders the deputy sheriff to lock him. He sees the carved stone which is used to protect the people fallen onto the ground. He picks up the stone, puts it in his pocket, and leaves. On the other hand, a family of 4 is traveling in their RV. The family consists of Julie and Ethan, who are siblings. Their father, Jim, is driving and their mother is in the front passenger seat of the car. As they are driving, they see a tree that has blocked the road. Jim unlocks his seatbelt and goes to check what is happening. Upon going near the fallen tree, he notices a flock of crows in the sky and heads back to the car. He decides to change his route, not knowing that he has been diverted from the main road. On the new route, Jim can't find a way back to the highway and Julie notices that she has lost the signal on her phone too. In the meantime, the sheriff visits the colony to meet his son Ellis. Ellis is then seen making a portrait of a girl, Fatima. Sheriff enters the room and Fatima rushes to him to hug him. Later, Fatima notices that the sheriff wants to talk to his son, so she leaves them alone. The sheriff tells Ellis about the death of Megan and Lauren, but he doesn't look concerned. The sheriff, upon seeing that his son doesn't care about the deaths, leaves the colony, disappointed. Jim sees the people near the graveyard and tells his wife to lock the vehicle after he leaves the vehicle. The sheriff tells those people present at the graveyard to not say anything to the people that have just arrived. He tells the deputy sheriff that they both will deal with this. Jim tries to communicate with the others, but none of them reply and walk away. Then, he talks to the sheriff and asks him about the highway. Sheriff asks him about his family in the vehicle and tells him the way that leads to the highway. Jim heads back to the car and drives towards the highway, but to his surprise comes back to the town again. Jim tries to ask a girl, Sarah, about the highway, but she ignores him and walks away. Later, they are still on the road when all of a sudden they see a car heading their way. They decide to ask the person driving about the exit, but the car starts to go into a zigzag manner, making Jim loses control of his RV and crash. The person in the other car, Toby, gets out of the car injured and starts to look for help. On the other hand, Jim's wife Tabitha is not waking up and his son Ethan has a rod stuck in his thighs. In the meantime, Sheriff Boyd and the deputy sheriff are busy laying spikes on the road when they are approached by injured Toby. Upon hearing what Toby told them, they rush to the site where the cars are present. The sheriff finds an intoxicated person named Jade. After seeing him, The sheriff handcuffs Jade to his car so he doesn't go away. He then sees Jim's RV fallen off the road and rushes towards it. The sheriff enters the vehicle and tells everyone to stay calm and checks if Tabitha is alive or not. On the other hand, Ellis is in the graveyard visiting Megan and Lauren. Ellis is spotted by Father Katri, the deputy sheriff, and Kristi, who tells him that they are going to help the sheriff. Julie is taken out by the sheriff and she looks really scared for her family. Later, Tabitha regains consciousness and is carried out by Ellis and the deputy sheriff Kenny. Kristi then comes to the sheriff and tells him that it would take an hour more to stitch up Ethan. It is getting late, so the sheriff shows her the stone and orders her to do it in the RV. The sheriff tells Jim's family to head to the town immediately before it gets dark. Somewhere else, Toby is in the hospital and is killed by Sarah with a screwdriver. In the meantime, Kristi, Jim, and Sheriff Boyd are tied up with Ethan in the RV. The RV's windows are being covered by the sheriff while Jim and Kristi are trying to take the rod out of Ethan's leg. The RV is successfully covered by the sheriff and he hangs a stone. Jim asks the sheriff about the stone and he tells him that it is for protection. The sheriff tells the two to keep down the voice, but all of a sudden Ethan goes into a shock and starts shaking tremendously. The sheriff is looking out of the RV while it is raining. He notices people are walking toward the RV and Ethan also stops shaking. Upon hearing the voices of people outside the RV, Jim is relieved and suggests the sheriff invite them into the RV but is refused. Sheriff Boyd tells him that these people are not what he thinks they are and they have to stay away from him. Meanwhile, the others reach the end road that goes to the colony house. They all rush to the colony house. While they are running, Jade falls and hits his head but is carried by Father Katri and Kenny. When all of them reach the house, they start banging on the door of the house waiting for Donna and the people to open the door. The people inside the house think that they are not real people and refuse to open the door. Fatima sees Ellis from inside the house, but in the meantime, Julie sees that there are other people outside with them that they don't know of. One of them takes the name of Julie and Julie tries to communicate with him, but Kenny shoots him in the shoulder. The boy who got shot in the shoulder feels nothing and gives an evil smirk to them, leaving Julie in disbelief. Donna reaches in time and orders to open the door for the people outside. Kenny closes the door when everyone is in to ensure that the other people don't come into the house. Meanwhile, in the RV, the sheriff assures Jim that those people weren't real and also lets him know that the stone works as a talisman, keeping away the monsters. He tells him as long as the windows and doors are covered and the stone is hung up, there is no need to worry. All of a sudden, Kristi hears scratches and nicks and rushes to see if the stone is still hung or not. Sheriff Boyd tells her to stay calm and not let the voices get in her head. Later, all three of them manage to pull the rod out of Ethan's leg. After everyone is tired and falls asleep, Kristi has a nightmare, and when she wakes up it is morning. On the other hand, both Julie and Tabitha are tied in different rooms. Tabitha is being asked a question by Donna and Julie is with a creepy man, Victor. Victor is one of the older people in the colony house, but Julie is terrified to see him. Fatima gives company to Julie. Fatima unties her and takes her to a room that is full of portraits made by Ellis. She also tells her that the monster tries to whisper things and gets in the head of the people so they could open the door for them. Stay tuned for the next video.